So this week we'll be using a similar setup to what we did in the fall when we did the introductory PowerLab, and this was just looking at being able to calculate heart rate using a pulse transducer. So the setup as far as PowerLab goes is the same. What we'll need for today is, of course, our PowerLab system. We need a computer system that's running the lab chart software, and then the only thing you're hooking up this week to PowerLab is the pulse transducer. So this is just the connection that you're going to put on your finger. Same thing as we did in the fall. For today's lab, we're also going to add in a blood pressure cuff and a sphygmomanometer. And the blood pressure cuff we used last week. And with the blood pressure cuff, what you're going to do is make sure that two things are set up in order to be able to hear. First of all, that you have these earbuds basically pointing forward in your ears. That's the way that our outer ear tubes allow us to get sound in there. So if they're pointing backwards, the way that they turn out to be more comfortable, you're not going to hear much. Going to the other end of this, we also have an option of listening to either this side or this side here. And there is a little adjustment where we can actually twist the tube coming into here, and that will open up a hole there. Some of these will actually have a green dot to indicate which side you're listening to. This one doesn't, but I can see that when I turn it to this direction, there's a hole. So as long as I have my ears, my earbuds pointing forwards, and I have this facing the way I'm interested in listening, I should be able to get sound through this. If not, you probably won't hear anything. For this week, we're going to use the smaller side. This will help us a little bit more in a loud classroom and be able to hear blood pressures. So we're going to begin lab by just practicing our technique with blood pressure, and I'm going to talk about that real briefly here. So this is the other part of the setup what we haven't used yet, and this is called a sphygmomanometer. And this actually allows us to inflate this to a certain amount of pressure. It's measured in millimeters of mercury, and with this what we're going to do is inflate it to 180 millimeters of mercury. When you're doing that, this is going to be on your subject's arm, and you'll want to line this up so that you are in line with the brachial artery. So if the person is righty, you're going to line it up with this arrow for the right arm, and if they're lefty, you're going to line it up with the arrow for the left arm. The convention is to basically do this on the dominant arm, and that's because there's likely more muscle mass on that arm. So that's just the way that we've done it, and that's the way we're going to follow through with this today. So that would be the basic setup as far as putting this on their arm. You're going to wrap this cuff around here where you can get the Velcro to hold on to itself like that. And we want this to be snug, so it should not be sliding around on their arm. It should be fairly tight. The next part of this is that once we have this set up on our subject, we are going to use this to inflate the cuff. So this is going to bring it up to whatever the pressure is that we choose. Like I mentioned, it'll be 180 millimeters of mercury. So we are going to inflate this, and if the person's arm was in there, you would see the arrow going up to whatever we pump it to. And once we get to there, we want to be able to let this out. So commonly what I'll see in lab is people tighten this up very tight, and then makes it very hard to actually open that up. We want to make sure that we can run this all with one hand. So when you're tightening it up, just make it finger tight with two fingers, and then make sure you can pump, and make sure you can also let out the air. That's going to help a lot as far as getting this to work for you with one hand. The other hand, of course, is going to be holding this bell on the person's arm, so you're only going to have one arm to work with this. So that's the basic idea. We will go over this technique in the beginning of lab next week so that we can help you out with that. We have these options of these single stethoscopes, and then we also have dual stethoscopes. And the dual stethoscopes will let you and your lab partner listen together to basically better determine where you're actually hearing the Korsakoff sounds that we're listening for. So that is the setup of the other things that we need, the stethoscope and sphygmomanometer. And as far as the computer software that we're going to use this week, if you go into your Windows search icon right down here in the corner, you're just going to go in there and type in BP settings, and right away I get that in my search. And once I click on this here, then the file opens up. And I am just going to blow this file up here and then move it over to this screen. So if you've done everything right, basically what you're going to see is a green start button here. And this week we're only using one channel, so it should just be one screen. And then to complete the setup, all I'm going to do is just wrap this around my index finger. It should be snug, it shouldn't really pull off. And once I've done that, once I've got it set up, what I'm going to do is just click the start button to see that everything's working out okay. I do want to make sure that I'm minimizing any electrical interference by moving this wire away from anything else, the monitor, any other wires, and then I'm going to sit quietly. Now what I'm noticing is that there are just pressure spikes coming up, and you guys saw this in the fall, so it's very similar to that lab. What's going to be interesting for you today is seeing how this blood pressure cuff impacts what we're seeing on the screen. So that's the big difference. You will basically look at blood pressure in the arm and the leg, well, the arm, the forearm, and the leg. And you'll also look at this when your subject is in different positions. So that's what we're trying to do this week, and I'm going to leave those surprises for you to figure out in lab. I have 2 other videos, actually an entire stream of videos related to blood pressure. The first 2 are very relevant for preparing you for lab, so I would like you to watch those 2, and if you're interested in the rest of them, it's probably going to help you out in lecture to watch the rest of those videos that are in that BP stream. The set of videos is from the Khan Academy, and it's really good descriptions that I think is going to offer, some other supplemental material to help you out with understanding blood pressure. So enjoy this week's lab. It's a fun one.